Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk a bit on Albert Camus and his Nobel acceptance speech. Albert Camus is one of the finest writers of the 20th century, a French-Algerian philosopher, novelist, a playwright, essayist, born on 7th of November 1913, the year when World War I was looming in the air. He was born in a remote corner of colonial Algeria, where his father was employed as a laborer in a vineyard. Camus' mother, Catherine, she was the daughter of Spanish immigrants. She was half deaf, and she also suffered from a sort of speech impediment. She cleaned houses to support her family, support her two sons. In spite of all the difficulties that Camus had to face during his childhood, because of his father's death, a life filled with poverty and destitution, lots of physical ailments and mental issues alike, he calls his childhood a sort of a happy one. It was a happy childhood, that is what he says. In 1937, he published his first book of short writings titled The Wrong Side and the Right Side. His first novel, The Stranger, got published in the year 1942. The whole of his philosophical ideas are compact in his two philosophical essays, The Myth of Sisyphus, which was published in the year 1942, and The Rebel. His other works include A Crow's Purpose, published in the year 1944, and Caligula in 1945. Four of these works, The Stranger, The Myth of Sisyphus, Crow's Purpose, and Caligula, are viewed by himself as exemplifying his philosophy of absurdism. Both of the plays, Caligula and Crow's Purpose, are landmarks in the theatre of absurd. The next novel, The Plague, which was published in the year 1947, that is his second novel. The Plague is of course a kind of a humanistic work. It deals with the outbreak of bubonic plague in the French-Algerian port city of Oran, and is set in the 1940s. State of Siege, published in the year 1948, The Just Assassins in 1949 are two of his other plays, and The Rebel, as I told you before, which was published in the year 1951, that is his long philosophical essay. The Rebel covered some of his ideas that he had already explored in the Plague, and it gained, the philosophical essay Rebel gained much of an attention that it resulted in a sort of a confrontation between Sartre and Camus. Camus talked a lot about the harms of revolution, which Sartre, who was favoring and working for communism, couldn't take in. The Fall is a kind of semi-autobiographical work which talks about his own alienation with his family and friends because of the political views that he had. In 1957, he published a collection of short fiction titled Exile in the Kingdom, and it was in the same year that he was awarded with the most prestigious Nobel Prize for Literature. It was in 1959 that he was working on his next novel, and he was also to become the director of Paris Theatre, but unfortunately on January 4th, 1960, he was killed in a car accident. The manuscript for The First Man was with him, and it was posthumously published. Now let's talk a bit on his philosophy, the philosophy of absurd. It was in his work, in his philosophical work, The Myth of Sisyphus, that he puts forward the first principle of absurdism, distancing himself from the existentialism of Jean-Paul Sartre. Human beings are naturally inclined to want and expect the world to be intelligible in the full and familiar way that religious and philosophical systems have portrayed it. This sort of intelligibility purports to be comprehensive enough to explain the world as a whole, and also it tries to explain the world in terms that human beings care about, or in ways that make sense with respect to human values. This sort of essentialism, which was in vogue right from Plato and Aristotle till the 19th century, gave to the existentialist thought which flourished in the mid of the 20th century with Kierkegaard, Heidegger, Sartre and Camus leading the team. In the first part of his career, as most critics would put it, Camus was an existentialist and had great acquaintance with Sartre. Both of them emphasized individual uniqueness, freedom and responsibility in opposition to various sorts of determinism and essentialism. Existentialism, its name deriving from the principle that existence precedes essence. The absurd constitutes Camus' first principle, and he defines his intellectual program of absurdism precisely in contrast with existentialism. Camus, in a review of Sartre's Nausea in 1938, says, in quote, "The realization that life is absurd cannot be an end, but only a beginning. This is a truth that nearly all great minds have taken as their starting point." In 1943, he declares that the purpose of the myth of Sisyphus is to define, I quote, "an absurd way of thinking, that is, one delivered of metaphysical hope, by way of a criticism of several themes of existential philosophy," unquote. In 1944, he declares that although it is a great philosophical adventure, he believes the conclusions of existentialism to be false. And Sartre characterizes Camus as a proponent not of existentialism but of a coherent and profound philosophy of the absurd. Now, Camus' only book of ideas, that is The Myth of Sisyphus, explicitly criticizes existentialism. In Camus' view, neither human existence nor the world are themselves absurd. Instead, the absurd arises because the world is resistant to this kind of intelligibility. We want the world to make sense, but it does not make sense. To see this conflict, that we want the world to make sense and the world ultimately does not make sense at all, to see this particular conflict is to see the absurd. While Camus is convinced of the world's unintelligibility in the sense that he describes it, he nevertheless believes that there are certain claims about which one can be reasonably confident. That is, my existence as a conscious being and the existence of the world I can touch. He says that, I quote, "This heart within me I can feel and I judge that it exists. This world I can touch and I likewise judge that it exists. There ends all my knowledge and the rest is construction." Now, living is keeping the absurd alive. Keeping it alive, keeping the absurd alive is above all contemplating it. Now let's move on to his Nobel acceptance speech. He was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature at the age of 44 in the year 1957, thus becoming the second youngest Nobel Prize recipient after Rudyard Kipling and the first African to win it. He was awarded the Nobel for his important literary production, which with clear-sighted earnestness illuminates the problems of the human conscience in our times. This Nobel acceptance speech, which we have got to study, was delivered by Camus upon receiving the award on 10th December 1957. He, in a quite humble manner, tries to put forward the role that an artist has in the society. In a world where violence looms around, where safety has become a dream, where peace and happiness does not happen at all, it's high time that we think about the place of a writer, about the role of an artist in difficult times, especially. What is an artist? Where do we place an artist in difficult times? What is an artist, a writer, supposed to do in times of conflict? Camus begins his Nobel acceptance speech by showering gratitude upon the Academy, which has honored him with this most covetous award ever. From the very beginning itself, when you look at your book, from the very beginning of the speech itself, we get to know that, or he begins the speech by saying that he doubts whether he deserves this merit or not. He says that with this announcement, he has all of a sudden transformed or transported from a very common young man who is quite rich in doubts about the world he lives in, a person who is from a person who is so very used to a solitary life. He is suddenly being transposed into an elevated position onto the center of the stage, where everyone looks at him, everyone is gazing at him with admiration, of course. And on that stage, when he stands on that stage, he feels a sort of a panic, because he is in the limelight. He is so very kind of transported into the limelight of the whole world, and he is on the stage now. And he says that I am quite doubtful of my own merits, and I am quite very much confused of me deserving this prize, because there are lots and lots of greater men who deserve this merit, who really deserve this merit, who are being condemned to silence, who are marginalized, and especially when in a condition when the whole of the world is going through a political scenario, a cultural, a societal scenario which is not conducive enough to live, when the whole world is going through misery, he doubts whether he deserves this particular award or not. Especially when we are talking about the 1950s and all, it is the most turbulent decades, and it was the most turbulent decade in the global scenario, when the whole world was witnessing all sorts of war, all sorts of Cold War, world wars, lots and lots of global tensions. Then after this introduction, after this beginning, he moves on to talk about two facts which had supported him throughout his life and in all course of his life. The first one is the idea that he has of his art, and the second one is the role of the writer. And he is trying to explain both these facts, which he says that has supported him throughout his life in times of conflict especially. Now let's look at the first one, the idea that he has of his art. He says that I cannot live without art, but I have never placed it above everything. If on the other hand I need it, it's because it cannot be separated from my fellow men, and it allows me to live such as I am on one level with them. So for him, he says that I cannot live without art. But art is not above everything. He of course needs art, because just because he cannot be separated from his fellow human beings. It is art which helps him, which really helps him to live in par with his fellow human beings. Artists, any artist for that matter, through art provides a sort of a privileged picture of common life, its joys and sufferings through their works. Artists cannot be separated. Artist is very much embedded in the society that he lives in. He cannot be separated from the world around. An artist is different only when he feels that he is not different. An artist is different only if he feels that he is one with the world. He is not different from the world. He is like the rest of them. Then only he becomes different. That is what makes an artist different from the rest of the society. That he feels that he is one amongst them. He is not somebody who is higher, who has got a high standard, or who has got an elevated position from the rest of the world. The artist is a person who stands in a midway. anyway in a midway between the beauty of the art on the one hand and the community on the other hand. He needs to create the beauty of the art, and there is the community which is so much which he is so much part of. So artist beautifies what he sees around. They try to understand the world. They scorn nothing, they judge nothing. Just understand. They just understand the world around them, and they just try to reflect it through their writings. Now, the second fact that he talks about is the role of the writer. What is the role of the writer? According to Camus, writer, any artist is at the service of the society. He is at the service of the people around him, not the people who rule, but the people who suffer. The silence of an unknown prisoner who is abandoned to the humiliations and sufferings, the problems of the society at large, the problem that people face around him, that is what an artist should bring out. He cannot forget the silence of the unknown prisoner, and it is his duty to bring the voice of the prisoner out. It is his task. It is the artist's task. It is the artist who makes the prisoner speak, who lets him speak through the means of his art. Now, it is only when the artist takes up the task of service to truth and service to freedom that he would be able to win the hearts of the living community as a whole. He can never take refuge in lies. He should refuse to lie about, he should of course refuse to lie about what he knows, what he sees around, and he should, to the last point, he should resist oppression by all means. So Camus talks about the two tasks which constitute the greatness of any artist's art, which would of course bring him closer to the community, closer to the people around him. One is service to truth, and the second one is service of liberty. Writing is a commitment. Any artist is committed to write, but he is also committed to share and bear the history of misery, of the suffering, of the hope of the people around him who are sharing the same history. Art for Camus is political. Art is a political act for him. He is not ready to place art on an elevated scale, on an elevated level, bereft of all the realistic concerns of the society, bereft of the sufferings of the people around him. There is a relationship between literature and truth. There is a relationship between art and the world around. An artist is very much embedded in the society, and art mirrors what society is. So an artist is a servant to truth. Now, what kind of a commitment does the writer have? Camus stresses that the importance of the writer lies in times of social, cultural and political upheavals, like lots and lots of turbulences which are happening, convulsions which are happening, especially when he was talking about his own times, the pre and post World War scenario, the second World War furor that was happening. What kind of a commitment does a writer have during these kinds of turbulences, during these kinds of conflicted times? He says that any artist should feel for others and is committed to write the suffering of the people and be with the suffering of the people. He is to write not standing with the victors, not standing with those people who create history, who make history, with the colonizers, not with the conquerors, but with a mass of that hushed voices, that silenced voices, the victims who did not commit any crime of their own, whose destruction did not have any place in any of the historical documents. He is a person, an artist is a person who should stand with these suffering masses who did not have any role in the making of the history, who had to suffer, who got distracted in the making of the history by the history makers. So that is the writer's commitment, to stand with the suffering, the silenced voices of the mass. Camus talks about his own generation and says that we cannot command from our generation. His generation was a generation who had gone through lots and lots of sufferings, beginning with the First World War, who has gone through lots and lots of wars, the Spanish Civil War, the Second World War, Hitler, the genocide, the concentration camps, the tortures, the prisons. We cannot demand or we cannot command them to be optimistic. We cannot say that this is a generation that was the Camus' generation was a generation who had not known what peace would be like, what happiness would be like, what ultimately life would be like. So we cannot expect this generation, who is of course on the verge of all kinds of destruction, nuclear destruction, war destruction, all kinds of destruction, to be optimistic. We cannot tell them to be optimistic because they are pessimistic. They have moved towards being pessimistic. They are on the verge of despair. They have lost all their hopes and they have completely rushed into a sort of nihilism. But on the other hand, we do have another group who have refused to be nihilistic, who have refused or who are actually trying to fight the catastrophe, trying to come out of this destruction, come out of the catastrophe, come out of the conflict, and is trying to move towards a new world, fighting the instinct of death which was looming all around. Of course, an artist's duty is to reform the world, but an artist's duty is also to prevent the world from destroying itself. Reforming the world is done by lots and lots of other writers before, and another duty that a writer has is of course to prevent the world from destroying itself. And Camus says that this generation, my generation of writers, is of course to take up the duty of preventing the world from destroying itself. Now, when we are talking about this world of Camus, this is a world which is bearing the brunt of a corrupt history, fallen revolutions, wars, technological disasters, technological madness, atomic disasters, dead gods, worn out ideologies, mediocre power ruling, intelligence becoming servant of hatred and oppression. So in this particular scenario, it is the artist's duty, it is the writer's duty to re-establish a little of what is left from within and without, to bring back the dignity of life as well as death. In a world which is in ruins, disintegrated to the core, where tyrants are establishing the kingdom of death, it is the artist's duty to run not with the clock but against the clock, to try to restore peace and not servitude, not slavery, to bring a new labor, culture and a new set of ideals. Maybe this generation will not succeed in bringing out a new world order, but then it would strive. This generation would strive for a better future, and the world has begun to rise. Of course, in different ways, the world, the people around, the generation had begun to rise for truth and liberty, and there are people who are even ready to sacrifice their own lives to uphold truth, not lies, to uphold liberty, not servitude. So Albert Camus bestows his greatest honors to those millions of people who are ready to sacrifice anything and everything for the world, for the betterment of a society, betterment of the future world. Now, where do we place the writer? Albert Camus places the writer with his fellow beings, as I told you before, with his comrades. A writer, according to Camus, always has a double existence. On the one hand, he is vulnerable to the problems of the society. On the other hand, he is very much obstinate enough to stand for the truth. Sometimes he may be quite unjust for a particular group of people, but on the other hand, he is standing and striving hard for a higher justice in view of everybody, not a few. He always has he always does his work without shame, without pride, taking into consideration sort of a universal justice. He does not stand with a group of people. Instead, he takes into consideration everybody, the whole of the people, the whole of the community. So he always has a double existence. We cannot expect We cannot expect solutions from a writer. We cannot expect high morals from artists. Truth is something which is very mysterious, elusive, which we'll have to move towards too. We should always move towards truth. We should always move towards liberty. Liberty, of course, brings us huge responsibility. It sets us free, of course, but it is dangerous as well. And a writer's duty is to march towards truth and liberty. Sometimes a writer may fail, we may fall, but at the same time we should stand up again. A writer should stand up again, an artist should stand up again and move on and on till he reaches liberty and truth. So a writer is not a preacher of virtue, he is not a moralist, he is a writer is a follower of truth, of liberty, and his focus is only of the higher truth. Albert Camus ends his speech by expressing gratitude for this honor which was bestowed on him, and he would love to dedicate, he would love to receive the honor on behalf of all those people, all the generation, all the people around, the whole of the writers around, the whole of the artists around, who are fighting for truth, fighting for liberty, and fighting for justice, who did not have any sort of privileges, for that matter, of any kind, privileges of any kind, who had, of course, known and lived through misery and persecution. And he stands with each and every suffering human being and thanks the whole of the crew and accepts this reward on behalf of all the people who are on the suffering end. Thank you.